Welcome to Glioblastoma AKA GBM, a podcast brought to you by the Glioblastoma Research Organization, highlighting stories of GBM warriors, caregivers, medical advisors, and more. Welcome to Season 3 of our podcast, where we delve deep into the world of glioblastoma, also known as GBM. Join us as we navigate the complexities of glioblastoma with expert insights and heartfelt narratives. Please remember that the information presented in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended to treat, diagnose, or prevent any disease, and you should contact your medical provider or healthcare team with any questions. Novacure is pleased to support the Glioblastoma AKA GBM podcast. Novacure strives to extend survival in some of the most aggressive forms of cancer through the development and commercialization of their innovative therapy called Tumor Treating Fields. Novacure partners with the Glioblastoma Research Organization to work together on behalf of patients and their loved ones impacted by GBM. To learn more, visit novacure.com. David Fitting, welcome to the Glioblastoma AKA GBM podcast. I am so excited to have you here today for the second time now on the show to talk about your story with cancer, and hear more about you. So thanks for coming up here.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I love doing this, love working with, the Glioblastoma Research Organization. This is really the first organization that I've ever worked with specifically for GBM. I've done a lot of pediatric cancer and even some adult cancer work with like American Cancer Society, but to have something for GBM and GBM patients, the outreach that you have all had in that community and have put my story out there, have put other long-term survivor stories out there like Greg Link, having our stories out there, I've been, just constant emails and Instagram messages, LinkedIn messages of people who say, hey, I saw your story on Glioblastoma Research Organization Instagram. Can you talk to me about your protocol? Could you talk to me, what are some things I should do for, physical health, or, what should I expect about chemotherapy? And, being able to get out to, help people to the best of my ability and just get that message out there that there are long-term survivors. That's awesome.
Definitely. And just so to backtrack a little bit so that listeners that don't know who you are can listen to hear your story. Can you share more about what your story is? I know you've had a very long journey with cancer throughout your entire life, and would love for you to share more.
Absolutely. So my journey with cancer actually starts in 1996 when my mom was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer, and I went to all of her chemotherapy treatments with her, and she's in remission. So fast forward 7 years to 2003, I start my own personal journey with cancer. In 2003, I was 10, and my entire life, I never got sick. Never. My brother and sister always had inferior immune systems. Not me. Never got the cold, nothing. And then one day in probably March of 2003, I start getting really bad headaches. And it starts off as, headaches that are keeping me home from school. Then they turn into headaches that are keeping me up at night. Then it turns into headaches so bad that it hurts to physically touch the side of my head. So we went to the pediatrician in May, probably 2 or 3 times in a week. And my pediatrician at the time, his daughter, unfortunately passed away from bone cancer many years prior, but he was very proactive, and he's known me my entire life, and he knew I was never the child that was in there. It was my brother and sister in there. So he touched the side of my head, and I swatted his hand away. And he said, nope, we're going to send him to a CT right now. So we left the office that day. I got a CT and was immediately told to go back to the pediatrician. So as a 10-year-old, I was thinking, what an inconvenience. I want to go home. I want to play. I wasn't thinking brain tumor or cancer or anything like that. He took my mom into the room, left me out with the nurses, and told her, he's got a brain tumor. So at the time, we didn't know if it was brain cancer or, brain tumor. I had surgery in May of 2003. I believe it was May 13th, and was diagnosed with GBM about 3 days afterwards. And at the time, when I was diagnosed, there was really nothing innovated about GBM treatment. Your Temidor, your radiation, and if you're a candidate, surgery. So I was given about 4 to 6 months to live at 10. Completed my radiation, 36 treatments, completed a year of Temidor, and relapsed a year to the day in May of 2004. So after that, we went down to Miami Children's, which is now Nicholas Children's. I had surgery again. Now with recurring GBM, especially in children back then, nothing. There was nothing they could do. And that was what they told my mom. Take him home, let him get comfortable. He's got about 9 weeks to live. My mom was like, well, thank you, but we're going to get a second opinion. And so with the help of my oncologist up in West Palm Beach, Dr. Gauda, he got in touch with Duke because he knew they were running protocols, and working with Dr. Henry Friedman and Dr. Garangan, we got me on a protocol from Duke, which ultimately saved my life. And that protocol consisted of gliadel wafers, which are chemotherapy wafers that they implant in your brain during your craniotomy, and CPT-11, which is a chemotherapy called irinotecan, which is one of the most commonly used for colorectal cancers and really all cancers, and tamoxifen, which is one of the most famous drugs because it's used in breast cancer. So it was really just a cocktail of chemotherapies. I believe I was one of 50 globally that was on this protocol, and I'm the only one who survived. Fast forward, 2004 up to 2019, I'm in remission. I wasn't even doing MRIs at the time because I was so confident that I know the signs of a brain tumor. If I feel it, I'll talk to my doctor. Started having jaw pain. Just didn't really think much of it. I knew that at the time I worked in neurosurgery, so I had seen a lot of these craniotomies, and it is sometimes you do go into the jaw space, and I figured, all these years later, I'm probably just having issues with my jaw. I thought it was TMJ. So I went to a TMJ specialist, and without doing any imaging, he told me I had TMJ disorder and a severe underbite, and I needed to get total jaw reconstructive surgery, and he was going to give me some sort of a mouth guard to recorrect it. And I was like, I can't really tell that without doing imaging. So I got an x-ray, and the x-ray from the dentist's office, I looked at it, and the base of my skull and my mandible weren't connected. So they're about an inch apart, and that's not normal unless you've had some sort of, contact sport injury, or unfortunately, if you have a soft tissue mass or something separating it. From there, I went to a cranial maxillofacial surgeon, and he immediately sent me for an MRI, which showed a baseball-sized tumor in my mandibular condyle. So the whole TMJ region right here, come to find out, this tumor, which I never would have thought I would have, is actually radiation-induced osteosarcoma. So radiation treatment from 2003. We're talking 16 and a half years post-radiation treatment. I'm 27 years old at the time. I end up getting cancer. And, in fairness to the doctors back in 2003, I didn't have 16 and a half years to live. I had 16 weeks to live. So we never even knew that was that could happen, really. And so I went on chemo again in 2019 to 2020. I just did 2 rounds. The chemo I was on was very harsh. I lost all my hair, which I had never done. I had never lost my hair when I was on chemo as a kid. And it was really just beating my body up. So I stopped the chemo. I had the tumor resected, so it was about a 13-hour surgery. What they did is they removed my mandibular condyle down to about the base of my chin almost, so nearly my entire mandible. and replaced it with my fibula. After that, they wanted me to start doing more chemo again. And I've refused it and decided that every year I'll get 3 MRIs a year unless I feel something. And so since February 2020, I've been in remission.
That's amazing. I mean, that's a pretty significant cancer story, and it's wild to especially have that radiation-induced cancer like later on in your life. What were your thoughts when that happened? I mean, 16 years ago, it's not something that you would have ever expected, and it's a really big deal. And so how did you feel? Like, I'm sure part of you might have been like super, you had maximum 16 weeks, and here you are 16 years later, but how did you feel like having a second type of cancer?
The diagnosis was just so shocking because my family does have a genetic mutation. We just kind of have a Christmas tree of cancers that run in our family: colon, breast, endometriosis on the women's side, prostate, brain. I'm the only lucky one who's gotten GBM, and they're usually very high grade cancer. So I knew genetically I was predisposed to cancer, and I always say, despite how good my exterior genetics are, my interior ones are always trying to kill me. So, but to get that type of cancer, and not just that type of cancer, but to see how massive that tumor was. That's a tumor that had been growing for years. And
that's not something that like you ever felt growing. I mean, like, I feel like if it's in your jaw, like, and you said it was the size of a baseball, like, how does that work?
That's something, people ask me when I tell them about this is, well, couldn't you see it in the mirror? And I always show them the same picture of myself about 2 days before I had this MRI. So I clearly had this giant tumor. Couldn't tell. That's something because of our genetic mutation. So my family has something called Lynch syndrome. My tumors, along with my mother's tumors, my brothers, my uncles, everybody in the family's had cancer. They've all been encapsulated. Every single one of them has been encapsulated, and they're all very high grade. So I've had stage 4 cancer 3 times. Every single one of them was encapsulated. And they found that with Lynch syndrome, it's pretty common for it to, your body to almost form a protection around it, like an immune response to it. Talking to the doctors, they said, because it's encapsulated, it was likely that it would have just kept getting bigger and bigger. It would have eventually broken out of that. But I have a picture of the tumor when it was resected from my jaw, and it's a perfect circumference under encapsulation. So I think that has a big reason of why I just didn't see it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's interesting also because, now in present day, you also work in cancer.
Yeah.
Did you ever think of when you were younger that that's like a field that you wanted to work in? Or like, do you ever find that it hits very close to home, being that it's a major part of your life? Like, how does that work for you?
Yeah, as a kid, I, even as a child going through cancer, I was deeply involved in the cancer world outside of the medicine side. I was big in the fundraising. I was big in just the mental health side of it, helping kids go through it. And so I always had a passion for it. I tried not to let it kind of be my identity. So I did, as a kid, I kind of got in and got out before now as an adult. Now I've fully entrenched myself in it because I kind of feel like it's my responsibility to do so. Working in cancer now, I work for a company that coincidentally in 2003 is the company whose radiation was used to treat me. So this company, unbeknownst to me, in 2003, I would end up working for this company down in South Florida, working at some of the facilities where I was treated. Being part of that is, it's very rewarding, knowing that every time I go into a case, I'm providing a product that's used to seek and destroy cancer.
What is that like for you, though, to be back at the places that you were previously treated at with the product that you were treated with? I mean, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it is. At first, it was just a little strange because I would see these patients and I'd be like, I know exactly what you're going through, at least to an extent. Like, I know what they're going to go through with this treatment. And part of me wants to kind of overstep my boundaries and say, hey, if you continue to have success and long-term survival, don't stop getting your MRIs. Just know that there is such thing as radiation-induced cancer, so on and so forth. I haven't, just because it is just kind of an overstep of boundaries, but I have talked to several doctors who I work with and I've told them my story. And they're all said, we've never met a 20 plus year GBM survivor.
Well, aren't you the longest term survivor in the United States?
Yes. So
I have a I was like, I have a button for that, and it will make cheering noises.
Wait, let
me see.
Yeah. Is that it? I
was playing around with this the other day, and I was like, it was just hitting buttons. I was like, oh,
that's nice.
Okay, it does something. Yeah.
Okay. So yes.
But also speaking of sharing your story, I know that, was it 2022 or 21 when we first connected? We had a story about you that was published in, it was Men's Weekly?
Newsweek.
Men's Health.
Newsweek
and Men's Health.
And then Men's Health was May of 2023.
And since then, so many people have reached out to share their story with you.
Goodness.
What has that been like? Because I know that you've been a huge face of advocacy, not for the organization, as an ambassador, which we're super thankful to have you involved. But what has your advocacy work been like?
It's really thanks to you and your group putting together those articles, putting together the resources to get me into Newsweek and then into actual print with Men's Health. There's been so much outreach, and it's been continuous. In fact, right now on my LinkedIn, I have 3 unanswered messages that I'm going to answer after this that are all cancer related. My mom, my friend, myself, somebody's been diagnosed with GBM. What can I do? And it's been international. I mean, I mentioned when we were at the paddle event, I've spoken to people in Slovenia. I've spoken to people in Norway, in Saudi Arabia, in India, in Israel. I mean, all over the globe because of the Glioblastoma Research Organization Instagram, because of you guys getting me involved with Men's Health and Newsweek. I've had such an outreach with that story. So, it's humbling to have people reach out to you and ask you for, help with their loved ones and put trust in you. And I try and just give them the best advice I can give. I realize there's a lot of people from around the world that don't necessarily have the luxury that I had with a Duke University right in my backyard. I always tell people, and this is for people all over the world, if you're diagnosed with GBM, your loved one's diagnosed with GBM, and you get an opinion and you don't like it, best thing you could do is find a teaching hospital, university hospital that perhaps might be doing some glioblastoma research, and see if you can get involved in that trial. And I only say that because I did that and I'm here. It's at times when I was first starting to talk to people about my story, when I was like a young adult, I felt bad because I realized I always tell people, I have a horrible situation with the best circumstances. And what I mean by that is going back to my genetic mutation. That Lynch syndrome has saved my life. You look at the survival rate of people with Lynch syndrome versus those who don't across all cancers, and we have a significantly higher survival rate. My tumors being encapsulated is unheard of. Glioblastoma is hypervascular. It metastasizes very quickly, oftentimes turns into a secondary cancer. Mine stayed encapsulated. At first I felt I was giving false hope, but then I was like, no, my story is very true. And if there's something I can help with somebody, I do believe that getting a second opinion, being your own advocate is extremely important. Staying physically active is extremely important. And surrounding yourself with people who are positive and build you up. And, so that's advice I would give to everybody.
And talking about being your own advocate, what did that look like for you throughout your entire cancer journey?
Being so young, being 10, I had my mom who was a huge advocate, single mother with 3 kids. And she was the one, this is prior to social media. It's 2003. The only social media we had for cancer was a page called Caring Bridge. And my mom was on that religiously, printing out article after article, getting in touch with Dr. Ben Carson at the time, and at the time another long-term cancer survivor whose name was David Bailey, who's since passed away. But because of David Bailey, my mom found out about the doctors at Duke, Dr. Garangan and Dr. Henry Friedman. So she was such a huge advocate. She would bring in article after article to my neurosurgeon, my first neurosurgeon at the time, and almost challenge him. This was before WebMD was even a thing, but she was kind of that WebMD mom who's like, hey, listen, there's this out here, there's this. And, when you're talking about your life or a child's life or any, a loved one's life, you don't be afraid to ruffle feathers. A lot of people see doctors and they're intimidated by them. And, I found most of the time that's not even the doctor doing that. That's people thinking, this person's so much smarter than me, but they only know what they know. And if you have a good doctor and you bring them something, they'll look at it and say, you know what? I can only read so much. I'm busy. Perhaps we should look into that.
Definitely. So I guess fast forward to now, present day. I mean, what does life look like for you to maybe inspire other people? I don't want, you have a big announcement with this year recently. Let's share it. It's already on your Instagram, but it's exciting.
It is, yes. It's Instagram official. So I am engaged.
Wait. Woo!
Yeah, I'm engaged, and I try not to look at what I'm doing now in my life through the lens of I wasn't supposed to be doing this, or I was told I wasn't going to be doing this, because even when I was diagnosed at 10, I remember asking my neurosurgeon at the time, because he told me I had cancer, and I didn't even understand staging back then. I didn't know I had the worst cancer. I asked him if I was going to die, and he said, yeah, it's a good possibility. And I remember getting very angry at him and saying, no, I'm not going to die. And my mom was upset, and then it's okay. I'm fine. I'm not going to die. And I think about it now that it wasn't out of ignorance, more so it was out of, I truly believed I was going to be okay. So now I kind of look at this as everything I'm doing, I was supposed to be doing.
Looking back then, I mean, to your situation when the doctor said that you're going to die and you were saying, no, I'm not. Mm-hmm. What, in your head where you're saying you felt like you were going to be okay, is there any certain things that you thought of, or what kind of ran through your head back then? I'm not sure if you remember, but
I do remember, actually. I do. I remember I was in the ICU room. He told me this. I remember my mom had me pause Toy Story, and he came in and spoke, and he had already talked to my mom outside of the room, and I could tell my mom never really showed when she was upset around me, just to kind of protect me from her emotions. And that's really important. I've seen the opposite with parents kind of be hysterical in front of their kids, and it could sometimes be detrimental to your kid's confidence. But with my mom, she was always like a rock. And he said this, and I just remember I was insulted. I remember just thinking, how dare you? And I've always been very stubborn and kind of the type of person, you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to do it. And for good and for bad. So when I heard that, I was like, that's a challenge. I'm not. And it was weird. I can't explain it. It was just kind of knowing. Just I knew it. I had this feeling. And I think that's partially why I don't even think about cancer on a day-to-day basis. I know it exists. I know with my genetics, I have to be checked, and there's a good chance that I could have a scare, but it's not, doesn't keep me up at night. Okay,
so you're getting engaged. Yes. You work in oncology.
Yes.
And I guess what is day-to-day like for you?
So
how often are you getting MRIs still? What does that part of your life look like? Because I feel like it's not it is a part of your life, but it's not what you're, like you just said, it's a small portion. It's part of you, but not constantly.
Yeah. So really, one thing, with cancer, it's, especially long-term surviving of cancer, you don't just stay up to date with your cancer. So the MRIs I get 3 a year, and that's just go in for a few hours. I get head and neck MRIs, and then I'm done. And really, everything else is what kind of I maintain the most. And that's something, having cancer as a kid, there was detriment to hormones because of chemo, because of radiation on the brain. And chemotherapy in itself, that's something that it kills everything. So having the right doctors, having my endocrinologist, having a urologist, having people who monitor my blood work and my hormones. So I get blood work regularly.
And was this like a doctor's recommendation, or is this something that you just kind of like wanted to do?
This goes back to kind of being your own advocate. So when after I finished chemo finally as a child, I was 13, I was almost 14. Part of being your own advocate, not just when it comes to your cancer, but also with your health, chemo and radiation and surgery has a lot of detrimental effects to your body, to the good parts of it. Chemo kills every cell. Doesn't unfortunately just target bad cells. Radiation can harm good cells as well. So post chemotherapy, I'm 13 and a half years old, or almost 14 really. And, at that stage as a boy, you start to change. And, looking at my classmates in the 8th and 9th grade, they started changing. I didn't. So that's when, my mom and I did some research. We found out the type of chemotherapy I am just completely stops all hormone production. Thyroid, growth hormone, testosterone, everything stopped. So now the next journey was correcting all the issues that chemotherapy caused, and that took about a year and a half for the first to get on certain hormone treatments, and then all the way up until age 19. So it's really important, especially as a child. People going through it as children, as teenagers, or even young adults. When your body isn't done changing, just make sure that you get your blood work done. I get blood work done more than I get my scans done. So getting your hormone panel checked, getting your minerals checked, and so on and so forth.
And how does that look for you? You and your fiance, do you guys want to have kids? And have you taken any certain, and if you don't want to talk about this, I can cut it out.
That's fine.
But are there any certain precautions that you're taking for your future family, or in regards to, having come from a background of chemo and radiation, what are you kind of doing, and what has that looked like for you with the next steps for your life and your family?
So right now, my fiance and I definitely want to have kids. That is, right now we've got so much focus with the wedding, but I know later down the road, that's something where I have all the ducks in a row on who I need to see, human reproduction doctors, what medications I need. And all of that was self-studied, self-learned, just, doing Google searches for the past 10 plus years of my life, and really just understanding what goes into, having to kind of reverse some of the effects, some of the drugs I've been on, chemo, radiation. And so, the biggest concern, I think, that a lot of people, when I tell them that I'm having kids, some people have just told me flat out, are you sure you want to have kids? If your history, I'm like, yeah, I do. And everybody immediately thinks cancer. But with my genetic mutation, there is a chance that I don't pass it along. With me, I got it from my mom. So this cancer lives on the X chromosome. And some of my cousins whose their uncle has it, they don't have it. And, so it just depends on it, if you're lucky enough to not get it.
Yeah, that makes sense. What would you say to someone that's currently maybe, I guess, two things. Let's say there is a child who is young, like you when you were 10 years old. What would you say to them that they're currently going through a cancer journey? And I guess secondly, what would you say to someone that's maybe you 4 years ago where you had this recurrence in your jaw? What would you say to someone in that position as well?
For kids, I think it's also something that I would say to the parents as well is don't let your kids stop being kids because of cancer. When I was diagnosed at 10, I was diagnosed and in the hospital a week before I was about to start tackle football. And back then, that's all I wanted to do was play football. You had to wait till 10 to play tackle. And so obviously brain cancer and tackle football don't really mix very well. So I wasn't able to play tackle. I've never played football. I've never got to play football. But instead, I skateboarded, and I eventually got into stand-up comedy, and I found different modes to keep me busy and in some ways distract me from suffering. I don't want to say that I was ever suffering, but yeah, in times it was tough, more so not necessarily the cancer side as a kid, but the social side, being sick, not being able to go to birthday parties, so on and so forth. So as parents, help your children find modes and find hobbies, find something they're passionate in that they're able to do even on their worst days. I don't care if it's video games, even if it's something, just get them where they feel like they have a happy place. And for adults, I cannot stress this enough. Just be in good physical shape. And it sounds ridiculous, but coming in, when you're sick and you go in somewhere and you're not in good shape, your body's already fighting something in itself. And that's one thing that these doctors told me. So part of the surgery, as I mentioned, for my jaw is they removed my fibula. I walked out of the hospital. That's something they'd never seen before. I also got out of the hospital in 4 days when I was supposed to be in there for 11 days. That was all because I came in good shape. I took care of my body. I exercised. I strength trained my bones, my joints. My immune system was strong. And that's something we can do every day. You don't have to go and lift heavy weight. Go for a walk, get outside, do some calisthenics if you don't want to lift weights. But it's just so important to maintain and, be in good shape, because too many people get sick and think, oh, now I'm going to start caring about myself. No, you're going to be too sick to do what you needed to do prior.
What is your workout regimen now to this day? What do you like to do? What's the health routine? Let's hear it.
So really for me, I've been exercising. I've been lifting weights since I was 13 years old. So we're going on over 18 years now. I've been in the gym, and now I'm just, I go 4 times a week, and I just do a combination of different weight training based off of, what body parts I want to hit. Some people call my type of training, it could be, formatted as a push-pull, or some people call it a bro split, where I'm like, I'm going to go in and maybe hit some arms and skip legs for a couple days and get my glamour muscles big. But at this point, I'm past the stage of where I was when I was in my mid-20s, where I was lifting really heavy, and now I'm just trying to stay functional, stay strong, keep my bones strong, keep my muscles strong, joints strong, and it's pretty just basic stuff. I get in. I'm not in the gym for multiple hours. I've never gone to the gym for 2 hours. I'm in there for 45 minutes to an hour. Maybe do 5 or 6 exercises and get out. And just that alone has helped me maintain.
Yeah. Well, David Fitting, it has been such a pleasure to have you on the show for a sec. I think you're the first guest that we've had that's been like, you're back. Like you made the recurrence.
Awesome.
What is it called? Like your sequel's back.
I'm
sequel's
back, yeah. Round 2.
We're super thankful to have you as an ambassador for the organization and to be a part of everything that we do. And it's awesome to hear your story. I think it inspires a lot of people, and I'm super honored to always be able to hang out and to chat. So thank you so much again for coming on the show. And
awesome. No, thank you again for having me and for everything you've done in between, my first appearance and now. My first appearance was
2 years ago.
It's 2 years ago.
Literally 2 years ago, like right now, which is crazy.
And since then, you've gotten me into 2 major publications. And more importantly than that, you've gotten me in touch with, I would venture to say, probably close to 100 people have reached out to me.
It's been that many?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't realize it was like that.
From all parts of the world. Every time you post anything about my story, I go to Instagram, I go to my requested messages. The last time you posted it recently, there was 12.
Wow.
12 messages.
And then the podcast is going to come out.
And now the podcast.
So for anyone that wants to like get in touch with you, should they DM you? I'll link all your stuff below. What do you prefer if anyone has any advice or just needs some hope, some David Pixie Dust? What can they do?
Absolutely. Yeah. So reaching out on Instagram is fine. Reaching out on LinkedIn. I can even send my email. But, really what I want to say to everybody who's reaching out, and I know
you can look at the camera.
Everybody who's reaching out, the majority of people who are reaching out for loved ones, and sometimes for themselves as well. And they're looking for hope. They're looking for answers on medication. Every physical body is different. I can, sometimes it's tough for me to tell people, but what's worked for me might work differently for other people. But what I can tell you will work for everybody is being your own advocate. Okay. If you want a second opinion, get a second opinion. And I say this, and I know there's some people who have reached out to me from different parts of the world where they don't have that teaching hospital opportunity. And it breaks my heart. But, for those who do have that, get online, do your research, stay in good physical shape. Just that in itself, for those of you who are reaching out, who have loved ones who are going through this, get them out of the house, get them in the sun, get them doing something where they're moving their body, because it not only helps build them strength, it releases dopamine and these feel-good hormones where it will make them, make them feel like they're fighting, like they're fighting against this cancer. And most importantly, surround yourself with people who are positive. And this is something when I was going through cancer when I was 10, we were part of a church at the time, and we're still friends with many of the people from the church, but we stopped going to church because, and this isn't all churches, so happened to be one of the ones we were going to. It almost felt like people didn't know how to deal with me having cancer. The only thing they knew how to do was be a martyr and kind of get ready to start grieving. And I can't tell you how many people walked up to me the first time I went back into church, adults with tears in their eyes. And for me as a kid, I was like, whoa.
You're like, what's going on? Why are you crying?
Yeah, I'm not.
Like, I'm here. I'm thriving.
I'm here. And one of the church leaders read me kind of my last rites. I don't really know, kind of what you read somebody before they pass away as like a blessing. And I was 10 years old, and I'm like, oh, no. I'm not going to die. So I'm not saying don't stay involved with your religion, but make sure you're surrounded by people who are who are ready to fight by you and not ready to bury you. Plain and simple.
No, super valid. That's great input, and I think it'll help a lot of people. So thank you again, David, for making a comeback and being the first guest in the new studio. Got a little technical difficulties. Little technical. That's all right. Technical. I can't even speak now, and my words are having technical difficulties. It is always awesome, always a pleasure, and thank you
so much.
This is too far. I didn't even gauge that.
We'll move these closer next time.
All right.
Awesome.
We'll see you next time on
much.
Glioblastoma AKA GBM.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Glioblastoma AKA GBM. To learn more about the Glioblastoma Research Organization, you can visit us online at gbmresearch.org, on Instagram or Facebook at Glioblastoma Research, on Twitter at glioblastoma.org, or on LinkedIn as Glioblastoma Research Organization. To start your own fundraiser, to donate, or to learn how to get more involved with the organization, please email us at contact@gbmresearch.org, and we'll see you on the next episode of Glioblastoma AKA GBM.